Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Ron.
I'm Jay.
I'm Lindsey.
It's the happiest season of all. It's Shane Black Christmas, everybody. So we are here to talk about the one that started it all, the reason for the season, the very first thing that kicked off the Christmas action movie boom, no matter what those diehard partisans will say. We are here to talk about Lethal Weapon, starring Danny Glover, Mel Gibson, Darlene Love, Tracy Wolff, Tom Atkins, Mitchell Ryan, and Gary Busey. Directed by the man, the myth, the legend, Dick Donner. Released in 1987 on a budget of $15 million. It grossed over $120 million at the box office. So, what is Shane Black Christmas other than one of my many dumb ideas? Well, Shane Black loves Christmas. All of his movies seem to take place at Christmas, around Christmas, or have some sort of serious Christmas element to it. But what makes a Shane Black movie? That is a question we will explore during this podcast. But before we jump onto that, what are your backgrounds with Shane Black movies? Let's start with you, Lindsey.
I think I've seen, maybe I haven't seen Lethal Weapon. I feel like it was one of those movies, all of the Lethal Weapon movies that were always on when I was growing up. But my biggest Shane Black experience is probably with Monster Squad, which is one of my faves. And this is actually the first time I've ever sat down and watched Lethal Weapon from start to finish. So I'm
Wow.
I know.
A Lethal Weapon virgin. I didn't know they still existed.
I didn't know I was one until I started watching. I don't know what movie I thought it was, but it wasn't this. So I have definitely seen bits and pieces of it. Like I said, growing up, it just felt like one of those movies that was always on and always talked about. And I just never watched it from start to finish like I thought I had. So yeah, I was a Lethal Weapon virgin and now I'm not. And I'm really excited to talk about it. But that's my history, short and sweet.
Jay, I know a little bit of your history because we talked about it off air, but please educate the audience. What is your history with Lethal Weapon?
Man, I don't know a time in my life when I hadn't seen this movie. Benefits of having a brother that's 5 years older than you, and he goes to the theaters with his buddies and sees this thing, and then it's holiday time when back then you had to wait almost 9 months to see a movie, after it had been in the theater, because this came out like in the spring. And so my folks rented this during the holidays because we always were huddled around watching movies and stuff. And so when we weren't watching whatever 30 Days of James Bond was on TNT or whatever, we rented this and threw it on. And it was just one of those fun things that I was just blown away by it. I think at that point I'd seen enough action movies and stuff. I was probably, I don't know, 10 or 11 when this came out. So I was getting to watch this and I just thought it was cool. I knew who Mel Gibson was because I had seen Road Warrior at that point, and I think Mad Max too. My dad was into that. And I think I knew who Danny Glover was through something else, but I wasn't, all that familiar. I knew who Tom Atkins was though, because I'd seen Halloween 3. And so I was all about that. But again, this movie, just again, I can't remember a time in my life when it wasn't there. And as far as Shane Black movies go, I think I've seen everything he's done, or written or been a part of. I've seen him in stuff. He's just somebody that, I don't know, I've always liked his stuff, and I always thought it had this cool sheen panache to it. He punched up a lot of the scripts of movies you like that you don't know, and he's one of those guys. And I don't know, I once described him as the accessible Quentin Tarantino for script doctoring, and I don't know if I'm right about that or not, but it's sort of that rapid fire kind of joke on top of action, on top of cool thing. And I don't know, I just like him and I like his stuff. And it's also the movie that I'll always remember as they turned Gary Busey into this bleach blonde assassin. I didn't know that was possible, but here we are, you know. So yeah, it's one of those that I've seen a lot, and I've seen all the sequels. I think I saw 3 and 4 in theaters actually, and I'm sad that I paid money for both of those. I don't have a fondness for the series so much, but this one is one I think I know, gosh, backward and forward. I could almost quote it, I think. So it's just a movie I know really well. And a soundtrack that I really do dig because I love David Sanborn's work. I like Eric Clapton. I like Michael Kamen. And the three of them together are just doing, the sweet late 80s, early 90s adult contemporary. I've had too many scotch and sodas and I'm going to go and buy that pack of Marlboro Reds just because, kind of song.
Well, my background for this movie is in 2021. I wrote a very contentious article for Den of Geek where I went into great detail about how Lethal Weapon is the Christmas action movie that Die Hard wishes it was. And boy, do people hate me online for that shit.
Do they?
People are wrong.
There are
People have so many feelings.
I went and looked at it today. There are like 30 plus comments, most of which are telling me that I'm a dumb idiot who should die. And that's a bit excessive, I think. God. But also, they're all wrong because this movie is the ultimate Christmas action movie to me. It's more than just the setting. Mm-hmm. Die Hard, if you made it a 4th of July party or a grand opening party, it wouldn't make a bit of difference. The only reason is you've got everybody gathered there for a party at Nakatomi Plaza. Lethal Weapon is a movie that at its first and foremost bit is about overcoming the terrible depression that people get at the holiday season.
I'd like the argument. I'm going to go look this up and read it. And then I'm also going to read the comments where everybody's getting in their feels about it too, because I have questions.
Yeah. Also, is there any debate whatsoever that Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie like there is about Die Hard being a Christmas movie?
Well, if you believe these commenters, yes, Lethal Weapon is not a Christmas movie. It's just a movie set at Christmas, which to me is the most backwards possible take on the thing that you can have.
Yeah, there's a lot of Christmas in this. It's like a major character introduction is buying a Christmas tree and some cocaine. How more 80s do you get than that?
Yeah.
I mean, let's not talk about what I did with my Saturday night, Jay.
Hey, I was today years old though when I found out one of those cocaine Christmas tree dealers is Anthony Kiedis of the Red Hot Chili Peppers' dad or something. No, I didn't realize.
Wow, that's a new one on me.
I went down the IMDb Tribune rabbit hole, as they say, and it's also called Jay Had Some Time at Lunch. And that's what I did. But no, I like your premise, Ron. I really do, because I think that's the thing that separates this from Die Hard, just for a minute on that, is that Die Hard is this one guy kind of taking on the world and Alan Rickman and all that coolness. But this is, it's about a partnership forming, the buddy cop trope done to maybe the nth degree and then copied 1,000 times over, in its wake. And there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie, because if you know anything about Shane Black's work and stuff, what actually makes it to screen is almost much lighter than what actually was written. The dude's got issues that he works out through the typewriter, because the original Lethal Weapon script is way darker and way more violent. And if you can imagine that, as most of his stories are, and but he always interlaces a lot of good humor with it. And it's hard to think about this now because Mel Gibson and Danny Glover are these mega stars, right? And stuff like that, or maybe they're not anymore, but they were for a long time. They weren't at this point. They were just dudes that, oh yeah, I saw that dude. I remember that dude in that Mad Max. They weren't the thing that drew people, and the fact that they got him in this, and look, Dick Donner at this point was known as the guy who got fired from Superman, so that it's an interesting career moment for everybody involved in this.
Well, one of the things I mentioned, Jay, in my article, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, although I very much could, as a plot summary for this. I wrote a different plot summary that's not as well thought out, but is, funnier. Even If Lethal Weapon isn't an out-and-out Christmas movie, it's very much a movie about battling through depression at one of the hardest times of the year for people who are hurting. Lethal Weapon acknowledges that there's a reason the Elvis song is called Blue Christmas, as beneath all the pretty paper, Christmas is one of the saddest, loneliest times of the year. What's more in the holiday spirit than battling through sadness? John McClane receiving a machine gun is a pretty crucial gift in Die Hard, but it's nothing compared to Martin Riggs finding a true friend and gaining a family who loves him enough to bring him in out of the cold and feed him Trish Murtaugh's terrible cooking.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I'm with you.
But before I start relitigating this for an audience of people who agree with me, or if you don't agree with me, shut the hell up. I should probably just go ahead and jump into the plot summary here.
Yes.
Martin Riggs is at the end of his rope. Not literally, he doesn't have a rope. He's got a bullet with his name on it, confounding his captain, who believes that Riggs is faking crazy to get a pension, even though he's doing Three Stooges routines to cocaine dealers at Christmas tree farms and basically begging to be shot and killed. Even the police therapist, which that's a thing, says otherwise. Riggs is legitimately crazy. Forced to rein in Wildcard Riggs is exhausted, middle-aged, but somehow younger than everyone on this podcast, Roger Murtaugh, a veteran police sergeant who, like Riggs, served in Vietnam with honor. They don't get along at first because mismatched cops never get along. Kind of the movie that really started that cliche.
Yep.
But as the two adventure around LA, Murtaugh begins to believe that Riggs is just as crazy as everyone thinks he is. Murtaugh is contacted by a former war buddy, Hunsaker, who wants Murtaugh's help in getting his daughter Amanda out of a life of prostitution and pornography. However, it's the 80s, so she jumps out of a window before anyone can help her. As it turns out, though, she didn't actually jump. She was kind of poisoned by tainted drugs and then possibly thrown off the balcony. The two detectives question her pimp, but it goes badly, and Riggs is forced to kill the pimp to save Murtaugh's life, which, who among us hasn't been forced to kill a pimp to save our partner? I mean, hands up. The two go on to find another friend of Amanda, another prostitute named Dixie, who witnessed her death. However, Dixie's home randomly explodes before they arrive because it's the 80s and homes just blew up like crazy then. Riggs finds a mercury switch in the debris, which he remembers being commonly used by agents in Vietnam. Some local kids saw the suspect and they recognize him by a tattoo, which Riggs also has, indicating that both the bomber and the detective are former members of the Special Forces. Riggs and Murtaugh crash Amanda's funeral to hit up Hunsaker for more information. As it turns out, Murtaugh's buddy worked for something called Shadow Company, which sounds really cool, a CIA unit tasked with stabilizing the local drug trade. These same Shadow Company goons reformed after the war as drug smugglers and general criminals, because that's what you do when the CIA no longer needs your services.
Isn't that the plot of the Robert Downey Jr. Mel Gibson movie Air America, by the way, just as an aside real quick?
That is the plot of Air America, Jay. There are CIA agents who start smuggling heroin.
I thought I had heard that somewhere before. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
But Air America didn't have the leadership of General McAllister and his sidekick and evil goon, Mr. Joshua. Yes. Hunsaker's role was to launder the funds. He called Murtaugh to confess, but McAllister killed his daughter in retaliation before he could actually do that. Hunsaker himself then is killed by Mr. Joshua. When he makes a move on Riggs, Riggs is saved by his bulletproof vest. But Riggs and Murtaugh fake Riggs' death to give the two cops a secret edge. Shadow Company goons kidnap Murtaugh's daughter and force him to meet them at El Mirage Lake. Riggs provides sniper support, but the three are captured and taken to a nightclub basement to be tortured for information. Riggs uses his crazy to escape, killing Simmons, and he frees Murtaugh and Rianne. Joshua escapes, but McAllister does not. Riggs and Murtaugh know Joshua will find Murtaugh at home for revenge because, he's Mr. Joshua, so they set a trap for him. Riggs beats Joshua in a giant 80s brawl, but chooses not to kill him. Instead, he turns Joshua over to the incompetent LAPD. Joshua escapes, grabs a cop's gun, and tries to shoot the two detectives, only to be gunned down for his troubles. That's what you get, horse teeth. A few weeks later, after visiting the grave of his wife, Riggs shows up at Murtaugh's residence and shares Christmas dinner with the family. His family. Riggs gives Murtaugh a gift, a hollow point bullet he'd been saving to commit suicide with. Turns out he doesn't need it anymore. Riggs has a new black family, and Murtaugh has a new white brother as credits roll.
Oh, excellent summary as always, to bring us through. Wow, there's just so much to talk about with this.
Where to
Yeah.
start?
I mean, I
Yeah.
think that I think that the obvious starting place is, of course, the pairing of Riggs and Murtaugh, which basically set up the buddy cop genre for the rest
Mhm.
of the next like 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, we got to talk about the genius of casting here because Danny Glover is like 40 in this movie, as you called out. He's younger than everybody on the show here, but he's supposed to be playing somebody turning 50. And Riggs is supposed to be in his late 30s, early 40s, but Mel Gibson is maybe 30 when he's shooting this movie. Like, it's very obvious. Um,
Well, I think, Jay, that their age difference is explained because Mel Gibson was an 18-year-old when he
yeah,
went into the
and
services, and Danny
yeah,
Glover and Murtaugh was an officer. He was like a
yeah.
lieutenant.
Yeah, like he and Hunsaker were in the same unit together and all that stuff that as we find out. But I mean, I get that. I mean, I think it plays. It's I have to think back because again, I was old enough to kind of know what was going on in the world, I guess, in the 80s, and Vietnam as a subject or as a background subject for characters was like a thing that the Rambo movies had popularized, particularly First Blood, which is a dark movie and about a lot of things. But the idea of having your characters, or at least one of your heroes, having lived through Nam and now, was leading a quote normal life and stuff, but still haunted by it, was something that was just popping up all the time. And you see two sides of that here. The one guy, Glover, who came out of that, and clearly he had kids during Nam and was still having kids after Nam, and now he's having boats and kids on an LA detective salary, which I mean they pay okay, but wow. And so he must have done some good investments
Well,
or something.
he's got two pensions. He'll have two pensions at this point, Jay.
This is true. He's got that. And, Darlene Love, that Christmas song once a year, that pays for a few things. That's coming around. So they got that money going on. But I love that like he's supposed to be this most very like white suburban normal family guy. And then when we meet Riggs, he's the one living in the ghetto who's like strung out and all the tropes of the other side, right? Like I think that's actually some smart stuff that Shane Black's got going on there.
Yeah, but I mean, who among us didn't want to live in a trailer on the beach after watching this movie?
I still want to live in a trailer.
Exactly.
We have
Mm-hmm.
a few trailer parks around here. Well, there's trailer park everywhere, but it is one of my life streams. So
It,
maybe
it,
I'll I
it,
just
it,
when I was a kid, I always thought trailer parks were so cool because your friends are really close and you can go. My cousin lived in a trailer park when I was growing up, so I thought they were fantastic. But I still, even that scene where it's raining and he's just sitting in there watching Christmas movies, smoking and crying and drinking and thinking about committing suicide, it still seemed really peaceful to me.
there was something about like you could, and I love that they don't give us the flashback of what Riggs's home life was when his wife was alive.
Mhm.
But he's got all these like little trinkets of like the things he saved from the house, that like her stuff that's still sitting around, and he just sort of sits in this like, I don't know, perpetual like homage to her when he's not at work.
That was really well done too. So, as a first timer watching this, it is unclear at the beginning, and I assume that's intentional, that it's unclear what happened to his once wife. And
Mhm.
so I think at first I just assumed, oh, this guy's a hot mess and she just left him and then you see that scene where he's crying over her picture and it's like, oh, no. And
I,
then of course they clarify it later in the movie, but
yeah, Danny Glover's on that huge cell phone that like you could carry around and also would heat up and you could fry eggs on the
It's
damn
got
thing.
like its own generator that comes
Yes,
with
yeah.
it.
He's talking to the police psychologist for $12.99 a minute on the taxpayer's dime to get the skinny on that. But yeah, I think she drops the line on it. But yeah, it is the pairing of them and the idea of the odd couple, right? And that goes all the way back to time and world, right? You have these two people that seemingly shouldn't have anything in common except that they're tasked together. And I think it's even when they meet, it's wild because we see Glover in like his sort of home life and he's just doing his stuff. And his wife tells him, this guy's called him and it's Hunsaker. And he has this whole like almost flashback in the kitchen while he's stepping over eggs, and stuff like that. Um, but it's all very just, it's Leave It to Beaverland almost. And then you see Riggs, who, we meet in a Christmas tree farm where he's also trying to buy cocaine, and he gets in this huge shootout with all these people. It's this wild introduction between the two of them, and then when they meet together, like just randomly in the office. Mel Gibson's like, I'm just going to pull out my Beretta 92F and just clean it right here in front of everybody, in front of all these cops.
Yeah, they do a really good job of establishing that Riggs just does not care anymore.
No.
And he's just ready to go. And that's even before he like handcuffs himself to a guy jumping off of the side of a building.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about that. Yeah.
Oh, we definitely have to talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like this pairing of Riggs and Murtaugh, it has so much informed so much of the movies that come after it. Specifically like specifically like the same producer Joel Silver who did this movie also went on to produce Die Hard. And I feel like there's some of this germ that went with him from this initial Shane Black script into Die Hard, because you've got the more straight-laced cop versus the kind of wild man cop who's living on the edge and doing something crazy. And you've got the man with the broken up family in John McClane versus the family man Al, who is buying ding dongs for his pregnant wife or whatever happens in the early part of that movie when they want to fat shame poor Reginald Bell Johnson.
Hey, he turned that into a sitcom for years, but that gave us Urkel, so I also hate him for it. But, and that's not his fault though. That was the producer's fault.
And that's not, and I feel like he might hate himself for it too a little bit. But however, he was in a pretty good Hallmark Christmas movie I saw where he played one of these three ghosts / angels who basically put somebody in this like timey-wimey scenario where they had to go back and like change their life, and he's very comforting and nice in the role.
So Lifetime Christmas movie script number 7. Is that what you're talking about? Because there are
I
8.
was gonna say, does
Yes.
this one have a hometown girl from the big city?
Did she leave like her 7-figure job to go, win the cookie decorating contest and save the farm or something?
Man, I don't know. Probably.
Anyway.
All I know is it wasn't one of the ones that Lindsay Lohan did for Netflix. So.
Oh, but probably Lacey Chabert. So,
I was just about to ask if she
no,
was in it.
Reginald Vell Johnson was the get for this movie. That should tell you the quality of
there
Lacey
you go.
Chabert type they've got.
There you go. No, I do think it's neat to watch them together, and I'm trying to think like Lindsay, you're the actor in the group here or whatever. Like, what is it about that dichotomy between them that works so well? Like, what is it about the pairing of the odd couple buddy cop thing that just we keep doing so much and that works so well in this?
Well, Danny Glover plays a straight man real well, I would say. And Martin Riggs is crazy enough to not seem like he might hurt someone. Wow, I'm really trying to form thoughts here. No, I think Mel plays him crazy enough because he has those few moments where he just like he starts hitting himself in the head and screaming, and Danny Glover's like, no, what? That's
Yeah.
no. I'm 50. I'm an old man, but he doesn't want to be old. I don't know. They play off of each other really well. They have great chemistry and they each know their specific assignment. I don't know what kind of direction either of them would have received, or if, the magic was just there before a director gave them
if you
gave
listen
them
to
notes.
if you listen to Donner, if you believe Donner, like the chemistry was there immediately. They just hit it off right away. And the casting director, Marion Doherty, is the person who suggested teaming Danny Glover with Mel Gibson, because Donner had always wanted to work with Mel Gibson. And she was like, you should check out this guy, Danny Glover. So they flew Gibson in from Australia and they flew Danny Glover in from Chicago where he was doing a play. And both the actors were like, well, we want to do something different than what we've been doing. And apparently, like, they just hit it off immediately. Mel Gibson had been doing, Mel Gibson stuff, and he wanted to do something that would show a little more like of his roundedness.
Range.
Yeah, and Danny Glover had been in The Color Purple, which is a pretty hardcore, being Mister is a pretty hardcore role.
Yeah.
And he was like, I need something different than that. And apparently the two of them, they got in the same room and the two of them just hit it off immediately. And like 2 hours in, all the other people that were considered for the movie, which is a murderer's row of people, like,
yeah,
Bruce Willis was considered, Christopher Lambert, Christopher Reeve,
Wow.
Michael Bain, Pierce Brosnan, Sylvester Stallone, Patrick Swayze, Michael Douglas, Jeff Goldblum, Kurt Russell, Ron Perlman.
Wait a minute, hold on, Michael Douglas?
I think
Yeah.
Wow.
Kurt Russell may have been able, but I don't know. Now that I've seen Mel Gibson really plays Martin Riggs well. I can't see any of those other names like doing what he did. He played a special kind of crazy, which I mean we know now probably wasn't acting so much, but
playing so far out of character, but
it worked real well in this role.
And I would say too, like he's talking about wanting to do something different. He's just playing Mad Max, but with more dialogue and like pathos. Like it's the same kind of ultra violent, I will go there when nobody else will, thing. Well, Ron, we did Cobra. He's Marion Cobretti. Like he just doesn't have the same,
but
like
I don't
coolness.
see him,
he's on the edge. That's the thing.
I don't see him as like serious though. I know one of the people Mel Gibson said he based his portrayal off of was Charlie Chaplin, who's just this kind of like
okay
force of nature that wreaks havoc everywhere he goes, and doesn't.
It's
look
also
like
just
he's
Mel
gonna...
Gibson, by the way.
Right. Which funny story. I have a friend who worked in movie promotion for a while, and one of the movies that she promoted was Apocalypto. So she met the star of Apocalypto and Mel Gibson in like Oklahoma City or somewhere, and hung out with him like all night, and said that Mel Gibson was just the shyest, like quietest dude you could ever hope to talk to, and like barely said 5 words all night, just sat and chain smoked the entire time.
Wow.
When he's smoking on that like on film, you can tell when an actor's a real smoker and when they're not.
Yeah.
And he's a real smoker.
Yeah. Those were not clove cigarettes. That was this thing was sponsored by Philip Morris somewhere in the background. I swear.
Yeah, 100%. He is just crushing butts that whole movie. It's crazy.
This whole thing. So it's the other thing I think that's a hallmark of Shane Black movies, he does these pairings of people that's a thing like that we'll see. The odd couple pairing, if you will, and stuff. But there's also an inordinate amount of gun porn in a Shane Black movie, and this movie in particular, along with Die Hard, but particularly this movie, I think fetishized the Beretta 92F for like pop culture for the rest of its life. Like I remember the History Channel when they gave up doing history and just started doing reality competitions, had like a shooting competition thing, and they had something where everybody had to shoot the Beretta, and they all referenced like Lethal Weapon and Die Hard. Like they just showed scenes of the movie talking about it, and I'm like, though that's a Shane Black thing. Every one of his movies has like a gun porn scene in it, and this is a lot of gun porn in this movie, especially with Mel Gibson, because he's all about the hardware, and it was the 80s too. I mean, it was what we did, but it's definitely a gun porn movie for sure.
And it's funny, if you want the not as good version of this, you can watch Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone in Tango and Cash.
Yeah.
Where but I think a lot of that is attributable to Stallone's ego.
Hmm.
He's like, Kurt can't be funnier than me, so I gotta tell some jokes, because
Yeah.
I'm a funny guy. Haven't you seen
Exactly.
what's that movie I did? Bugsy? Is it Bugsy? I can't
No, no,
remember.
no. Bugsy was that
That
was
was Warren
Warren
Beatty.
Beatty,
Yeah.
an actual actor.
Yeah,
But,
so whatever.
but but I do the other thing that Shane Black is good at is exposition while there's action going on. Like
Mm.
when he's when Riggs is up there talking the guy off the roof or whatever, and he's crushing out Marlboro Reds just hard with the guy, and he handcuffs him. He like lights two cigarettes and says, "All right, I'm taking you in," and the dude's like, "No, man, I'm going." And what I love is how just Mel Gibson goes immediately, like his accent slips, then he goes immediately Australian Mad Max. You really want to jump? Fine, and he just takes him off the building, and they have that whole like yelling and screaming match in the thing afterward. But he's got Danny Glover's gun to his chin, and he's gonna pull the trigger, man. He's gonna go, and Glover has to like put his hand in there to stop it. And they get so much out during those scenes, and when they're doing the little shoot off thing with the practice round stuff, they're sitting there laying out the whole case for you. And if you're not paying attention to the movie, you don't catch it. But that's a Shane Black thing. Like there's actual like police dialogue. The whole Law and Order episode is happening while they're just shooting guns and throwing people off buildings, which is kind of wild.
Which is
I
which is like the
love.
most 80s possible
Oh yeah.
exposition scene, right?
Hmm.
I love his use of not speaking to his use of silence in that range scene where Mel Gibson just has his little uh you know ear protection on and just like
Yeah.
as it's going out. And I don't know if either of you have ever been to an indoor gun range like that, but
Hmm.
I mean that's pretty accurate. You're just waiting and waiting. And then he just shoots and then it comes back in. So funny. Brian also thought that was hilarious. I asked if he wanted to watch this one with me too, and he just said, "Yep."
Oh, good. I was going to ask. Was
He
Brian
was
this had been Brian's first time watching Lethal Weapon, I assume, but
I don't know. I never even asked him to be honest.
the speed at which he agreed
I don't
leads
know.
me to
I assume
believe
he
that
was
he's
fine with it. Yeah.
probably
There's
seen it.
Yeah.
there's no way he hasn't seen Lethal Weapon.
I'm sure
Well,
he has.
and if
I'm
you've
sure
been to
he
a gun
has.
range, who among us hasn't tried to do the smiley face and failed miserably at it? Because that's fucking impossible. But unless you're the jackal, or something, that kind of a shot. But that's the other thing is I love they play about this is because usually like the crack shot, the person is the villain in one of these movies, right? And now it's the good guy. He tells all these stories about shooting people in Vietnam, from 1,000 yards away and all this insane stuff, and you're like, wow. And I think he says some line, and it's punctuated again by that hella score. I love the score of this movie. That
Yeah.
kind of weeping guitar stuff that Clapton's just will go down for. But he's in there. He's talking about like killing's the other thing I was ever any good at. It's like wow, like this is dark, dark shit going on behind all this. And if it weren't for the laughs and kind of the goofy stuff, I mean, again, you can hear Donner talk about it in the stuff that's left behind, and even Shane Black has said like the original script was very, very dark for both of them.
Maybe that whole Charlie Chaplin thing or trying to play it a little more light or campy worked really well because even in that even in that moment where Martin Riggs was saying, "No, but I'm actually really good at it," was just really sweet.
Mhm.
Like, "Aw, aw, good for
Uh,
you."
it's like when the person who's like really, if you've ever known somebody that works through and lives with depression and stuff like that, when they give themselves a true compliment, you like want to just hug them. It's like
Yeah.
wow, like you actually are good at it, even though that's a scary thing to be good at. But wow, you recognize the skill that it takes to do that. So, because I mean, if y'all done shooting, you know what it's like. If you're shooting long distance, you're doing math on the fly. Like
Mhm.
that, you have to do a lot of work to figure that out. You can't just prop up and do it, you know. And so that's, I don't know, it's neat to see though, but that's what makes their duo and their pairing work so well, I think, is that they each bring something to the table because we've talked a lot about Riggs, but Murtaugh is like a really, really good cop. Like he's smart and he's intuitive and he knows when to move and he's also the one like, no, see, I got him in the leg. Now I can question him, you know, like he's got like a whole plan going and he's trying to execute on this whole like, you know, larger theory that he's always trying to put together the case file and the theory where Riggs is just the bull in the china shop. And I like the dichotomy of that because you have to have the straight man not just be the straight man against the jokes, but he's got to be somebody that's moving things forward because he's the senior ranking officer. He's in charge of all this shit. He's the one that's got to explain it to the captain, you know, and all this because he's got to make the case for the DA. You know, that's what he's trying to do. And, you know, he's the one that when he's talking to Tom Atkins, you talk about a couple of actors really having some good stuff when he's at the bank after his daughter's dead and he's trying to talk to him and he's just, you know, you can tell Tom Atkins is like really just destroyed. Like, and Tom Atkins is not some venerable actor, but he's a good performer and he sold on that. Like I really liked what he was doing.
Like, I feel like the whole secondary cast of this movie is just full of like good character actors.
Oh yeah. Mitchell
Right.
Ryan. Yeah.
Him, Mitchell Ryan. The main reason they got Gary Busey was because they needed somebody who was as tall as Mel Gibson
Yeah.
to square off with Mel Gibson. And Busey,
A big
may not know
dude.
this by looking at him, he's a big dude.
Yeah.
And this was like he'd gotten in really good shape. He had lost like 60 pounds prior to
Mhm.
making this movie. He'd kind of been in a career slump after the Buddy Holly thing and his
Silver bullet.
motorcycle accident and stuff.
Yeah.
So he was like, he'd never been the bad guy. He was really excited. He was just like, I'll just jump in and do this. And those two guys worked really hard, specifically on their fight sequences, like the brawl that they have near the end of the movie.
Yeah, the Chuck Norris fight,
Mhm.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the stunt coordinator and a lot of the fight team guys wanted to show like weird things that hadn't been seen in like American
Mhm.
movies before. So those two dudes spent months learning like capoeira and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Like they brought
Mhm.
like they brought a Gracie, one of the Gracie family, in to teach them Brazilian jiu-jitsu for all those chokeholds and stuff that they do in that fight.
Mhm.
So like those two dudes were like super committed and just really looking to do something different.
Well, you're right though. The supporting cast carries this so well because you know Gary Busey as the bad guy, as just the henchman. He's the Bond henchman, you know, in this is so cool. And then Mitchell Ryan, I mean, he looks like he's you know your high school principal or the school or the you know the hospital administrator or so he's somebody that's kind of in the cog. But him playing like the former general who's running this drug op with these CIA operatives and stuff like that, he's so cool and calm. Like it's I don't know, man. I dug it. I feel like that informed a lot of what the script of Die Hard 2 became, you know, with the guys that are, you know, doing that plot. I don't know. I really liked him. I mean, I like Mitchell Ryan and stuff anyway. And he usually plays like somebody's dad or something. Like he's not ever playing the heavy. So you get these comedic, you know, fresh face actors to play the bad guys. It's fun, right? Lindsay, you've talked about that before. Like you get to play the evil person. That's a lot of fun, right?
Oh, it's a blast. You have to get used to like at least in live theater anyway, you have to get used to people not saying good job after a show because
Yeah.
they tend to avoid you. But
I mean, she did a good job though, right? So,
that means you did your job. That's
yeah.
the whole point. But yeah, but playing a bad guy, playing the heel is a blast. It's like
Mm,
also like dying on film or on stage, in film on
mm.
stage is also really fun if you get to milk it a little bit, especially. But
I mean, just think about like what these guys were known for prior to this movie, right?
Yeah.
Buddy
Mhm.
Holly is the heavy.
Yeah.
Everybody's dad is the evil general.
Exactly.
Halloween 3 Sex Machine Tom Atkins is the sad father.
The fog star.
Yeah, the Fogs Tom Atkins is the sad dad. The
Yeah.
says 5 words and glowers Max Rockatansky is the goofy dude doing Three Stooges shit in a shootout.
Yes. And then
And
Mister is the straight cop
yeah,
who's trying to keep it all going.
and the ultimate like shit heel mister is the family man who's just trying to coast through life to get those last 4 years to his retirement.
Yeah, his second
Well, when you
retirement.
put it
Yeah.
like that, this really is very Quentin Tarantino-y.
I mean, he kind of is. Like you know, I think Quentin and Shane have a lot in common.
Also, I feel like, I mean, this movie absolutely has everything. And I feel like, when people say like everything but the kitchen sink, right? Is that the saying?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that, like they packed everything but the kitchen sink, whatever. This movie packed everything but the kitchen sink. But then I feel like Gary Busey is the kitchen sink.
Oh yeah.
So when Gary Busey's in it, it's like, no, now they've actually have everything.
Well,
There's drugs, there's guns, there's boobs, there's Gary Busey, there's Krav Maga and jujitsu and
yes, and
houses
Gunborn.
blowing up and
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you think about Gary Busey, the way he plays. I mean, there's a couple times he gets to be like super Gary Busey, like he's yelling around the house and shooting shit, or whatever when he fights Riggs. But most of the time, he's like Mr. Cool. Like he puts his arm out so McAllister can burn it, so he can scare that club owner. Who man, that guy looks like
He
he
played that
definitely
well too. You can see
yeah.
like jaw clenching a little bit. It was good.
Yeah, have someone look at that. Yes, sir. But it's all like the chain of command thing and the idea of like
Mhm.
Gary Busey again being the Bond villain. That was kind of my favorite reference for it, or the Bond henchman rather. I was like, yeah, I kind of dig it. Like it's
Mhm.
very LA, but it's fun. Like like Michael Mann does all these LA movies and they're great, in a lot of ways, but they're very serious. There's none of this shit in it, and like Heat has none of this. There's no levity at all in it. The levity is a coffee scene where two of the most intense actors of all time are staring at each other. And I'm talking about before De Niro and Pacino quit and gave up, on doing anything back when they were really serious. This movie has a ton of levity in it in the middle of all this stuff. I mean, like you say, they're
Mhm.
walking up to, they try to interrogate Dixie the first time. She's wearing a coat. I don't know if y'all noticed this. I noticed it this time. Like when she's going like, "You're hilarious," at the cops or whatever. She still got the price tag hanging off the coat. Like, she bought that to go out that night because
Wow.
she's going to return it. And I'm like, it just tells you a lot about her. They go to her like rundown house, and that house blows the fuck up, y'all. Like there's some balsa wood flying everywhere. And it just made me again just be an old man and be quaint for like physical practical effects, man. Because it just that was an incredible explosion. And just I mean you see it coming out of nowhere. The kids are playing across the street. They start walking across the lawn, and boom, that baby is gone.
The thing I appreciate most about this movie is how much it seems like all the people who are supposed to be like badasses
Yeah.
come across like legitimate like people who know their shit, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, uh, Murtaugh might be pushing 50 and getting coasting to retirement, but he can still throw down, right?
Yeah. He was
Gary,
with Sam Kinison throwing down. The Sam Kinison history professor from back to school throwing down at Knob. Like those guys were together. Him, Tom Atkins, and Sam Kinison in the same unit. Just go there for a minute.
yeah, him, Tom Atkins, Gary Busey.
Yeah.
Like I keep going back to this, but
Mhm.
Bobby Bass, the stunt coordinator for this movie, was a former special forces instructor and a judo champion, like a military judo champion. The second AD is a dude whose name is Cedric Adams. He was like one of the first technical advisors they brought in. He's the guy who's like, all right, so we're gonna have these guys do Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Mhm.
I know capoeira, so they're gonna do some capoeira. We're gonna bring in Dennis Newsom, who knows this like street fighting technique called jailhouse rock that was invented by like slaves in the night in like the 18th century as a way to like fight in prisons and stuff. Like they
Well,
brought
I
in
learned
people
something new today.
they brought
Yeah.
in people who knew like down and dirty like
Well, it's real.
yes.
Like it
Yeah.
doesn't look choreographed. It looks very real on top of all of it. And that's what makes it cool. Though I do have a question for y'all, and this was just kind of like a bad guy, like, are we going too far question? Like, you poisoned the hooker that maybe shouldn't have seen too much, right? Okay. Well, you got to kill the one that poisoned her, but do you blow her house up? That seems a little conspicuous. Like, that seems a little far. And that made me wonder, like, did Dixie have a subplot we didn't know about? Was she like secretly dating General McAllister and he didn't want to buy her a Christmas present? It was like, it's time to uncuff, you know? That was the one thing that seemed a little far. Like they blew her house up. Like
Mm.
throwing a girl out a window, fine. Shooting somebody, okay. But like blowing the house up was a lot. Like it makes me wonder if like Mr. Joshua didn't go into business for himself on that one or something.
Maybe houses blowing up. I don't know the timeline of, meth operations, but meth houses blow up a lot,
Mhm.
and she was, in some kind of operation, so maybe it
Fair.
wouldn't have been questioned all that much. Plus, I think they were trying to kill the cops too.
Yeah, maybe that was the idea. Yeah, get them all at once. So, because I hadn't thought about that, Lindsay, you just said that. Because in my head, I've always been like, man, that was hella timing that just happened when they walked up. But now I'm like, no, Mr. Josh was sitting in a car the block over waiting on them and just waiting and then clicks the switch or whatever.
Yeah, and if it's a Mercury switch, it was probably timed. Like,
Mm.
or if not timed, there was a delay between the triggering and the fact that when it actually went off. So there
Yeah.
was definitely some intention there about let's just blow them all up. Screw it.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we can call it a gas leak, you know? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, something like
Yeah.
that.
Which was, I mean, that takes me back to like Buffy. Like every time that like something weird happened, they were like, "Oh, it was a gas leak," PCP. And that was the other like convenient excuse at the high school when some werewolf would eat people or whatever.
I did like the kids in this movie were all great too. So,
Hmm.
especially after that house explosion and the handful of kids that were playing across the street, none of them were scared. They were all really interested and excited. Whoa, look at that. Can we
Hmm.
do it again?
Yeah,
And I was
do it
like, yeah, I
again,
feel
do it
like
again.
that's a pretty standard kid reaction.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I loved that. I loved the little interrogation with the kid, like the way Danny Glover gets to him, because Mel Gibson's like
Yep.
having none of it, and Danny Glover's like, "Shut up, dude! I got 5 of these. Like, I know what I'm doing." You
Yeah.
know?
His kids are hilarious too. The
Yes.
the little one, Carrie,
Oh yeah.
what was the one line she had? "I'm glad you're home at a sensible hour."
Yeah, yeah. That you have this. They take time to have the dinner scene,
Mhm.
where the son breaks into the '80s rap, and about his sister crushing on the crazy cop that dad brought home for dinner, and all this stuff. But like they all have personality and character. And a movie nowadays just wouldn't bother with that. We spend 20 minutes doing something else. But I don't know. I like that about that the family. Rianne's the one that gets like all the screen time. Tracy Wolf and
Mhm.
stuff. And she's good. Like I buy it. I mean, I love it. Like she shows up in like her New Year's Eve dress or whatever, and all Danny Glover can say is like, Damn heartbreaker." He just didn't know what to do with that. He's like, "Oh my God," and, but they drop that cool line or whatever. It's like, the man has pits in his face. Your boyfriend does not have dimples or whatever. And then when they're calling in something later about a kid, in the neighborhood, he's like, "Yeah, I bet he's got dimples." Like, how'd you know that? He's like, "Oh shit." I was like,
Yep.
"Ooh, that's smart." That's some of that Shane Black shit, though. That Chekhov's dimples or whatever. Like, it's good dialogue that sets up and pays off.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that the more I watch it, and I've seen it a ton, uh,
Mm.
I think you might have seen it more than me, Jay, but um,
Only because I'm older.
I've seen it a lot and in a lot of different forms. It's a very much TNT special.
Oh yeah,
Um,
What, it's dadcore.
Dadcore,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what our friends at Two Girls, One Crypt like to call stuff like this. This is for sure dadcore. I'm here for it, though. I
Hmm.
love it.
And
Well, Die Hard
here,
was already in our Christmas movie rotation, so Lethal Weapon will definitely now forever be in our Christmas movie rotation.
Gotta be, yeah. So,
and
I didn't even realize that was a thing. I knew I liked the whole Christmas horror genre. Brian's never been a fan of that, so, I
I
watch
mean,
those
you
on
you
my own
started that
time.
with him with Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, so it wasn't exactly starting on a high point.
That's a fair point. But with him, that wasn't my first.
True, true.
But
So,
but But this whole like the Christmas action genre, I think is really like it really hits just the right nerve.
Hmm.
How do you
I mean,
feel about the kids recognizing Mr. Joshua's tattoo in comparison to Riggs's tattoo?
I think
I
that'd be the kind of thing
feel
a kid would get. Yeah.
I feel like in the 80s, yes. I feel like
Hmm.
these days, like,
No, because everybody has tattoos
yeah,
now. But
yeah,
yeah,
100%. Well, when they were first talking about the tattoo, I was like, there's no way these kids recognized it. But that's a good point, Ron. I think because now I'm so desensitized to every single human having tattoos, often multiple, that like I wouldn't pick out a specific tattoo on someone.
yeah.
Not saying these kids could be smarter than me or more perceptive. That's entirely possible. But yeah, in the 80s, I feel like that would
I
stick out
mean,
way
there
more.
were different kids were different back in the 80s, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, even
Well,
at
I
this
guess we were
point,
kids in the 80s, but
I
now
mean,
we're
look,
Yeah.
even at this point, most of Tommy Lee's arms weren't tattoos in Motley Crue yet. So I
that's a
mean,
good point.
I mean,
Yeah.
the only people that had that kind of tattoos were motorcycle gangs and metal bands, So
Mhm.
like one tattoo was enough for everybody to go like, oh, that stands out. It looks, and
It's
particularly something like that.
yeah, especially since
Yeah.
it's a military related tattoo.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, people in the military had tattoos. I remember
Hmm.
my grandpa had a tattoo that he had
Yep.
given himself, so that was a big thing and very
Yeah.
recognizable.
Yeah. And SF guys having like unit tattoos and stuff, that's still a
Yeah.
thing. So yeah,
Yep.
but I like that stuff because again, Riggs has dismissed this whole thing. And then when he points at it and he rolls his arm up, and he looks like, yeah, it says this, or whatever. And I remember they walking away and Murtaugh's looking at him and he's like, Roger, that's special forces. In other words, this is bad. Like this is about to get really bad. And I think Mel Gibson does have a good bit of comedy. He's like, I wonder if there's any openings in the fire department. So, but I mean, yeah, but I don't know. I love that. I love that about this, and it's what makes it fun. And then we've talked about the villains and like their goon squad or whatever, but it's you don't think about it when you see them all because they all have like long hair and they look like stuff. Like all these people are ex-military. They all served together. Even Al Leong, who makes it. Talking about an action genre veteran right there. He's a diehard. He's in this and every damn thing you saw. Along the way, and the dude always shows up and does horrible stuff. And him torturing Riggs with that electroshock situation while Gary Busey's interrogating him, that's intense, man. That scene is real raw.
I don't know what's scarier, Al Leong torturing me with electrical cables or Gary Busey talking to me.
I don't know, man. Mitchell Ryan putting salt in my gunshot wound in my arm, that sucked, man. Like,
Yeah. It's like you're
It
the
took
dad
me a
from
minute to
Terminator
figure
Day.
out
Come
what
on,
that
man.
was.
yep,
Yeah. I was like,
yeah.
"Oh, shit." They're
Yeah.
just going real like you said,
Mhm.
very raw.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way they even get there too, that shootout in the desert, that is a hella action scene. Like in the wide open like that, to pull that off. And the trick of it is they think Riggs is dead because they've done the drive-by on him and he lived because he had his vest on, right? And he's 1,000 yards away just picking him off. And I love Gary Busey's line. He's like, damn it, it's Riggs. Like he knew it. He's like, damn it, I knew it. Knew he wasn't dead, and it's just cool, because he's just wiping these people out. They're in this huge gunfight, and the bad guys win. I mean, that's a staple of the James Bond series. Is somewhere in the second act, Bond gets captured usually, and because it doesn't always go well, And I don't know, I dug it. I thought it was great. And then again, the dueling torture scenes, it's something that bigger budget movies wouldn't take time to do. And a lot of sequels or spin-offs of this kind of thing wouldn't take the time to like let you see these guys in the absolute worst. Like, how are they going to get out of it like this, where it's that bad? And then,
Mhm.
they turn it on their heads. They're always going to get out, but when you see it coming to fruition, so as well, to use the Die Hard cross reference again, John McClane has to walk across friggin' glass, on bare feet to
Oh,
get out
yeah,
of
he
it,
does.
So it's the same thing.
So my question is, if we know that Riggs before this moment has wanted to die, why is he wearing the bulletproof vest?
That's a good question. I think he's found the reason to live. At that point, he's had the bad dinner, but he's like found something. And I think he's intrigued by this case. This whole idea,
I
like it's
think a
the
lot of it is the case. Yeah, I feel
yeah,
like he's hooked.
yes. Who are
Yeah.
these shadow company guys? Like, what is this?
And what's
Yeah.
funny is I feel like this case is what hooks both of them.
Hmm.
Like it gives Riggs kind of a reason to live, and it gives Murtaugh like some excitement and some like interest in his job again
Yeah.
in a
That's
very
true
meaningful
because
way. Yeah.
yeah, and he talks a lot about you're just overthinking it. Everything's actually really simple. And I think getting into that lull that Murtaugh got into, what it aged him faster, even though we know he wasn't actually the actor wasn't 50. Anyway, but yeah, you're right. It breathed some new life into him.
You go back to that shootout scene. He's going like, "What? The dead girl, the dead guy killed the dead girl. We killed the dead guy. That's it. It's all done. You know,
Yeah.
we got it. We got to take care of it." And Riggs is like, "I'm sorry. It's just not that easy. Life's not that simple.
Mhm.
You know." And he's the one looking for the excitement. And together they find like, "Oh, what we really got in some deep shit, you know, with this." But it's what makes
Mhm.
it. It's what, like you say, invigorates both of them. Gives Riggs a reason to live and gives Murtaugh a reason to care again.
And I feel like Riggs is also one of those dudes who's like, I can't go until I see how this ends.
Yeah.
I
I got to
gotta
see the
Yeah.
end
ride
of
this out.
this. Obligation keeps me alive. Yeah, exactly. No, I get that. I mean, I think that's what's neat about it. And to watch them both get excited about it. I mean, look, Riggs acts like he's dead, you know, after Endo and Buddy Holly shocked the shit out of him for 30 minutes or whatever. And then he just jumps up and snaps that dude's neck, man. Talk about some jujitsu situation. I mean, that was hardcore.
Yeah, that's where one of the things I like about this movie is that it seems to be kind of dirty
Hmm.
after a fashion. Like it seems like grimy and messy and unpleasant in places where it should be
Mhm.
unpleasant, you know?
Well, also like too, you see both of these guys more or less with their shirt off. I mean, I know Danny Glover's got on like the tank top or whatever, and they're in reasonable shape, but they don't look like, you know, they're friggin' wrestlers. They look like dudes that just maybe stay in shape a little bit, you know. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Like
they're
they're svelte.
yeah, exactly. You know, Riggs is in good shape, but I watched him do that move again. You know, when he kills the guy, you know, hanging up like that. I'm like, the core strength that takes is
Yeah.
unbelievable. I'm like, nope, couldn't do it. No, wouldn't happen.
The timing is really well done through the whole movie too. It doesn't when I think Jay, you mentioned earlier, you know, there's always that moment where you feel like the bad guy is winning.
Hmm.
And there were a few of those throughout this, but it dwells on it just long enough. And all the dirty
Hmm.
parts are there just long enough. And all the happy parts are there just long enough. Like the timing and the tempo of this whole movie from start to finish
Hmm.
is really good.
Well, McAllister gets that great line, you know, when Danny Glover's telling him, you know, to go spit and all this kind of stuff, and that, you know, I'm gonna burn it
Mhm.
all that stuff. He's like, save me, son. There's no more heroes left in the world. This is a dude that's seen so many people die and has sent so many people to their death that he just doesn't care anymore. He just wants the money now. And then right at that moment, Riggs comes in and shoots 12 people, you know, and it's like, well, maybe there's one, you know,
Mhm.
but that's good filmmaking and good timing. And you know, that's in the script, but that's also Dick Donner knowing just when to punctuate that moment. Like he knew how to shoot this stuff and really make it efficient, but also give you the scope of it. Like when they shoot out through the club, you notice the band, like the fake trickster or whatever is on the stage, like never
Yeah.
fucking stops playing till they get the machine guns out. Like Rig shoots at least 4 people before they realize what's happening, because you probably wouldn't notice it. You know, it's so much noise. You've been in a noisy bar before, like you don't know what's going on. You know, you wouldn't hear a gunshot from a glass breaking necessarily.
Yeah, and this is back in the 80s when people didn't wear ear pro. So you
Yeah.
know those dudes were mostly deaf anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The front of house mix was very loud. But no, it is a great scene when they're chasing Joshua, and then we get the whole bit where they end up back at the Murtaugh house, you know. Um, and you man, they wrecked that lawn, you know, and they drive over the fire hydrant, right?
Ah, they did. And they just drove right through the house. Well, they didn't drive through the house. They sent the car through the house, but
Mm-hmm.
You know that that Danny, you know that Murtaugh is going to be more concerned about the lawn than he is the house.
Yeah.
'Cause
That's
he
fair.
definitely seems like one of those dudes who's like Hank Hill
Yes.
dealing with his lawn.
Yes, he is out there, man. He wants lawn of the month, and he's now mad because that's not going to happen. But no, I love the fight on the lawn, man. I can't say enough about that. That is, and the way it's shot too, with all the close-ups. You don't get you get a few good wide shots, but it's like you're in the fight. Like it's really good. A lot of good Foley work too, with all the punching and landing.
Have you?
I feel like Step Brothers maybe took something from that scene.
Yeah, good
That's
call.
an interesting pull, Lindsay, because
Yeah.
definitely I think there's some of that there. But had you seen a movie fight like that prior to this movie, Jay?
Nah, not that wasn't something staged as like a sport fight, Like, no.
Yeah.
Not like that. Well, I mean, I'd seen kung fu movies, but that again, it was like people in an arena. It was something that was part of like Enter the Dragon. There's like that whole thing, but that's what you're supposed to see, right? It's ninjas, and
Yeah,
I'd
and
seen
then like kung fu
You
movies,
Only
it's
Live
like
Twice, so
and
that
then like kung
yeah,
fu movies, you always get a lot of wide shots, right? Because you want to see
yes,
Bruce Lee doing the spinning back kick. You want to see Chuck
yeah.
Norris doing
Mhm.
the Chuck Norris kicks. You want to
Well,
see
yeah, again, like You Only Live Twice. You want to see the army of ninjas drop into Blofeld's lair and take out everybody. Yeah, that's totally the point. In this one, seeing two guys basically in a makeshift ring beat the hell out of each other. I don't know, like I feel like this and Roadhouse were really responsible for like popularizing this idea in a long time. The original Roadhouse, not the Jake Gyllenhaal one, which is fine by the way, but the
I
original
like
is
both of them, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But the OG Roadhouse, that's yeah.
and there's definitely something to me that makes it kind of feel like if you mash this up with like Enter the Dragon or
Mm.
like
Oh, yeah.
um
The Octagon.
Master of the Flying Guillotine or the Octagon, you end up with mixed martial arts.
Yeah, yeah, completely.
Especially those like early UFC fights where it was like, what would happen if a capoeira guy fought a sumo wrestler,
Or you mean
Bloodsport
what
style?
what they thought they wanted to do in No Holds Barred with Tiny Lister and Hulk Hogan in the Tough Man contest before they realized they didn't know what that was? But yeah,
Yeah,
same idea.
what would happen if a karate guy punched a convicted rapist in the balls 15 times?
Yep.
If you're not familiar with the crimes of Joe Son, look him up. But he deserved every one of those punches and then some.
Yes, yes. No, it's a
I
great
do
fight.
I like that they drop little nuggets throughout the movie too about how Martin Riggs is this master of all these different martial arts, and then they decided to give us a nice little payoff at the end.
Well, I mean, I love it. They're arresting the dude, and he just looks at Gary Busey, and I love like, "You want a shot at the title, champ?" He was like,
Yes,
"Oh,
that was a great
oh,
line.
that's a great promo." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yeah," because I was into wrestling at this point. I was like, "Oh, hell yeah, this is what I want right now."
Uh-huh.
Just Ricky Steamboat and this blonde asshole are about to go at it. So
That blonde
And Murtaugh
asshole's
was
name
like,
is
"Go
Ric
for
Flair.
it, buddy. Just do it."
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, and they really go. And what's neat is that Riggs has got him dead to rights. And I love that he lets him go. And he's like, "You ain't worth it." And I'm like, "Whoa, we've come a long way." When the killing machine says, "Nope, you're going to prison." Unlike everybody else that we've shot dead
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah, unlike these other 37 people we've shot, you get to go to jail.
Yeah, one
called-
person's got to go.
It's called character development, Jay.
Yes, it is. It's really good. So, but, well, I mean, and Danny Glover to get that piece of shit off my lawn. That's a great furthering Ron's
Yep.
theory that this is a man that cares about that lawn. So,
Yes.
not worried about the fact that my house is being flooded and half of it's on fire. But,
Hey, look, the house can be rebuilt easier than the lawn can be.
true. Because look, there's
Oof.
droughts in LA. Like, he can't water that every day. So.
No.
But what do y'all make though of the like where he actually tries to get the cop's gun and then they have to turn around and they shoot him together? I almost felt it a little too much. Like even today, I'm like, I don't know. Like it's fine, but because you want Gary Busey's character dead, like he deserves it. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
It didn't bother me, but you're right. It was probably a little tongue in cheek there. I don't
Well,
think it
it's
was
very much
necessary, but yeah.
like to me, it's very much like they're now on the same wavelength.
Yeah, because they do shoot him in tandem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good
they're no
point.
longer like, working at loggerheads with each other. They're like a team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, like, it's Gary Busey. So, like, he was probably going to chew through his handcuffs anyway and escape. So, like,
This is true. Yeah. He's yeah, he's standing there going, it'll be the day when you take me to jail. And then they put him down. But no, that's it's quite, but it's not quite the ending because I always forget there's a little coda at the end, where Riggs
Mhm.
he does the Tracy Bond thing. He goes to the grave, he sees the wife's thing, standing out in the rain and puts the flowers down and presumably goes and changes clothes before he goes to the Murtaughs. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe just wind dries in that truck of his.
I mean, if he's got the window down, it's LA. He'll dry out pretty quickly.
Probably, but shows up, gives Rianne the bullet, and then I love Murtaugh's like, no way I'm eating this without you here.
Yeah, that's
I
one of my favorite quotes in the movie is that the if you think I'm going to eat the world's lousiest Christmas turkey by myself, you're crazy.
Yeah.
well, I got news for you. I'm
Yeah.
not crazy.
Yeah. But that's a good moment between the two of them because like they're joking, but they're also being like, "I got you," Yeah, I get it, and I think you called it out, Ron. Like not only the case, but their partnership has now given them both a reason to live differently than they had in that job before. Riggs wants to live, obviously, and Murtaugh like is kind of excited about his job again. Even though he's near the end. So
Yeah, they both gained something out of this partnership, much the way that we have all gained something out of this podcast. Both this
Aww.
specific podcast recording and also, the 400 plus episodes of Film Strip going back to the dark ages when we talked about the comedies and after last season and stuff.
Oh, that's just your origin story. I was born in the darkness, sir. I was doing while you were sleeping, while you guys were dreaming of being on podcast.
No, well, actually, you were doing while you were sleeping while I was on a short-lived sports podcast that lasted like 4 episodes.
Which version of the Gridiron Breakdown were you on?
It was I had a podcast I owned a URL called sportsbastards.com, and I also did a podcast with my friend Rich, who had been a middle linebacker for Austin P State University. So he was able to bring real sports knowledge and also concussions, and I was able to just, be a snarky, crappy Bill Simmons type.
Oh, I wish the audio of that still existed.
I will find it. I'm sure I have it somewhere. I had to record and edit all that crap together. So,
Oh, memories.
but speaking of recording and editing stuff, I think we have gotten to the point where we are there to give our final thoughts, popcorn ratings, and recommendations for Lethal Weapon. Jay, you are the Murtaugh to Lindsey's Riggs. Please lead us off.
I somehow I'm still not too old for this shit, but no, this is extra large popcorn, and I'll say this now: there's things about the Lethal Weapon sequels that I can like and talk about and stuff, but I'll tell you right now, in my mind, like this is a one movie, and it's all it ever needed to be, and it's a perfect less than 2 hours. They jam so much into this, and it still works to this day. Even the dated tech and stuff, you don't think about it because you get lost in the good dialogue and the characters and the occasional comedy and all the stuff. So yeah, extra large popcorn for me. And I'm glad it's going to be in Lindsay's and Brian's Christmas rotation. It's been in mine for years, because it's like I usually do the double punch, do this and Die Hard, and I'm good for my Christmas action stuff. But yeah, extra large all the way.
Oh man.
Lindsay,
Oh, this was such an exciting journey. I started this movie thinking that I'd seen it before. I clearly had never seen it before, at least not all of it. And I was so pleasantly surprised. Like from the first second, I mean, the intro credits with the Christmas music, and I mean, until the very, very end, I enjoyed every bit of it. So yeah, I'm surprised myself to give it an extra large popcorn too. I don't know what I was expecting, but I truly enjoyed every second of it, and I wish I hadn't waited so long to watch it, because watching this and then Die Hard right after it does sound like the perfect little mashup. So Die Hard will probably be on the docket for tomorrow night, but no, and I said earlier, this movie has everything. It seriously has everything I think I would ever want in any kind of dad core Christmas action movie. So shout out to this special little gift that we got this December for our Shane Black Christmas. I'm gonna give it an extra large popcorn as well.
And I can't help but give it an extra large popcorn. This movie is fabulous. To me, it's more of a Christmas movie than Die Hard is. I've made that argument before. I'm not going to make it again. And that's not to slight Die Hard. Die Hard's awesome, right? But this movie is awesome and also like gives me Christmas feelings. Like it gives me the Christmas feels in the way that our friends from Tis the Podcast would say a movie gives them the Christmas feels. And I don't know, maybe that's just me, maybe that's just my tendency to have like terrible seasonal depression, maybe that's just my general dislike of Christmas, maybe it's the fact that I'm a middle-aged dad now, but like I feel this movie on a deeper level than I ever did in the 80s and early 90s. So for me, it's an extra large popcorn with one hollow point bullet perched on top of the box that will not be used. This is just, man, this movie's great. Shane Black rules. Let's just not kid ourselves. This movie is the shit.
Yeah.
And speaking of shit you can do, you can find the Film Strip Podcast on social media at Film Strip Pod. We are on all of the things. We are even now on Blue Sky, I believe, thanks to Jay. And on those places, you can interact with me or Jay. You can see announcements about our upcoming shows, lots of fun content, and you can make sure to subscribe and share the show. Everywhere fine pods can be casted, you can cast our pod. So please like, rate, review. Bonus points if you leave us a positive review, because it helps other people find our podcast and it makes us feel really good about ourselves. And isn't that the best Christmas feeling of all? Like, isn't that the best gift you can give some podcasts and ass nerds? Is like, here's a 5-star review. Your podcast doesn't make me want to blow my brains out. Thanks, guys.
That's all I want for Christmas.
Indeed, is a 5-star review. So
yes. So if you guys can make that happen for us, that would be great. If you want to read my Lethal Weapon action Christmas movie thing about Die Hard, that will be linked in our social media as well. That will be my plug for this episode. I've got some other stuff on Den of Geek about the Lincoln Lawyer. I've got some other fun things that are in the process that aren't ready yet for me to announce them, but will be coming up probably between now and the next recording we do. Jay?
yeah, we're coming up on a huge milestone, gang. Like in January, we're hitting episode 400 of this crazy show, and we've got like the whole gang on to do an episode. So it's going to be a big time. One might say millions of podcasts in the making, though it's actually about 399 in the making. So whatever. But yeah, here we are. It's going to be a big time, and we're looking forward to that. So look for that coming up in early January. We got another chapter of Shane Black Christmas coming up, though. We're not done with this December just yet.
We are not, and that's very exciting because Shane Black rules. I've already said that, but I cannot emphasize enough how much this movie and the next installment of Shane Black Christmas means to me. And in that spirit, what did one shepherd say to the other shepherd?
Get the flock out of here.
Thank you for Lindsey and Jay. I'm Ron. Thank you for listening to Film Strip.
Nice.
Thank you for listening to Filmstrip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Filmstrip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.